Welcome back. I'm Carissa Kranz, and there you have it. That is the best evidence we have in this case. What the jury's going to get to analyze, it is a body cam video footage. Yesterday, we heard testimony from a video analyst on the stand, direct examination, cross-examination, talking about the analytics of the video, the delay in the video, what the video means, and what his professional expert opinion is based on that video. And we're here today to also discuss that in studio and on set. With me is Imran Ansari, criminal defense attorney, and Ashley Willcott, a trial attorney. Let's discuss this video. Unfortunately, we couldn't see the jury and how they're viewing this at this time. And hey, Ashley, nice to see you as well.
Hi, Carissa.
How do you think that the jury is taking this video? It's not the best quality. You hear the sound and you hear the commotion and you see the commotion. Do you think the jury is taking this as something that is going towards the prosecution's case or against the prosecution's case?
I think it's with the prosecution's case, because when the jury takes this video in conjunction with the testimony they've heard, and there was a passenger in the car who said no, the car wasn't backing up as the police officer had initially said, backing up about to run over another police officer. That wasn't happening. So when you take the testimony and the expert's testimony in conjunction with this video, I think that it shows that even a reasonable person in his own head shouldn't have felt like he was being threatened by the car in the situation.
But isn't it possible that, you know, under those circumstances, it was dark outside, there was a lot of commotion, there were hundreds of kids, there was a shooting across the street that was allegedly gang-related, that it might be reasonable to respond to an officer yelling, you know, don't back up by shooting? Who knows what the officer was thinking? Hindsight's always 20/20.
You know, I think that's true, Carissa, but I also think that in this particular case, in spite of all the chaos, because it is chaotic and nobody knows what ends up, and there are guns being shot and it's dangerous, but in spite of that, I don't think there's any justification or policy allowing for a police officer to shoot into a car with people in it while the car is driving away.
Imran, what do you think? You're here with me on set.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. You know, when you take a law enforcement, they're charged with a heightened responsibility. They undergo training, they undergo firearms training, and they are expected to act in a certain manner when confronted with these sort of exigent circumstances, right? So, you know, the video is really damning to the defense. You see the video, you hear the testimony basically stating that this car was not going towards the other officer. However, you know, that's in direct contradiction to what Officer Oliver stated. So, you know, it's damning video, the testimony is damning, and officers are expected to be in a heightened sense of responsibility in these sort of situations.
Okay, and in these situations, okay, we're having some technical things. Okay, I just heard from the control room we have breaking news, and we need to switch gears and go to the Colorado hearing that we are covering here on Law&Crime. Let's take a look. Welcome back. I'm Carissa Kranz. So what's happening right there on the stand? As you saw, that was a use of force expert, and it said under the screen that he is talking outside the presence of the jury. Why? Because the judge is trying to determine whether or not the testimony from that expert is going to be allowed to be testimony in front of the jury. What you heard was the defense attorney questioning the prosecution's witness on the conclusory statements and the findings of those statements, and whether or not those statements are probative or prejudicial to a reasonable force versus excessive force finding. Imran, I want to give us the opportunity to discuss this before we have to go to our next break. Do you think, based on what you heard, that this is going to be testimony that's going to be allowed for the jury to hear?
Yeah, I think so, because it's critical testimony. You have to think about the standard here that Oliver is going to be really put to the test here. It's a reasonableness standard. Was his actions reasonable under the circumstances that he was faced with?
Okay, so then you want to ask if it's reasonable. Was there anything that you heard in his testimony that you could sum up that would make it unreasonable?
Well, in this particular expert's testimony?
Like we heard him say we didn't understand why he pulled the gun or why he had to fire rounds of shots. One thing I said yesterday is, why did he even shoot into the car when he could have shot the tires of the car?
Right.
Was it reasonable?
Well, it was interesting that this expert did mention the Supreme Court case Tennessee versus Gardner, which is sort of the framework, the legal framework, and the case law that really, guides these cases when dealing with police officers' use of excessive force. And in that case, it basically stated what is reasonable, when can an officer use excessive force. It's whether to protect his life or her life, or a life of another, or an innocent life, or when that possible defendant is fleeing the scene of a crime and is also using violence in fleeing that scene.
Okay.
So,
and I want to give Ashley
sure.
a moment to comment as well on this before we go to a break. Ashley, do you think that this is going to be testimony that's allowed in to prove whether it's reasonable or excessive force?
I do. So one of the things they did was went through his qualifications. What did he looked at? What did he review to ensure that this expert's actually qualified, number one, to give an expert opinion. Number two, I just want to comment on the fact that he testified that he did not feel like the shots at the car were necessary to protect himself or the other officer. And so I think it's going to be very compelling testimony if it's allowed. I do think it will be allowed.
Okay, great. So all good points. We all seem to agree that this is going to be allowed. But for the viewers, we got an insight into the testimony before the jurors do, which means we also always get more insight into a case on what should and, will be considered by the jury. We have to go to a quick break. We're going to continue to cover this and other cases gavel to gavel. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Carissa Kranz. That is a video analyst expert, Grant Fredericks. And his testimony is key because while you heard him talk for a few minutes there are two key points that he said that I want to make sure you picked up on. The first one is that the vehicle was steered away from the officers. And the second is that the vehicle was moving away from the officers and that the officers were advancing before the shots were fired. Therefore, prosecution witness is saying no imminent threat and excessive force. Imran, quick comment before we have to go to a break.
Yeah, the video evidence in this case is going to be really telling. Body camera footage is changing the game in trials and the way cases are prosecuted. This is a prime example of where the body camera footage directly contradicts what the defendant was stating in those early days of the investigation.
But does it directly contradict? You can't really see much in it. Ashley, I want to give you an opportunity to talk real fast.
Sure. I think that the other thing the defense is going to argue is A, you can't see much, and B, that he acted reasonably in his own mind. That's the defense's case.
Okay, great. Good comments from everybody. It's fun to have two people on set. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this minute.